Admiral Zextar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, the Sovereign Dawn. His 4 arms crossed behind his back as he stared at the holographic display showing a small blue planet. Earth, the home of the humans. Admiral, his communications. Officer called out, "We have received their response to our ultimatum." Zextar's eyes narrowed. In his 300 years of service to the Galactic Empire, no species had ever taken more than a few hours to surrender. The humans had used their full 72 hours. This was already unusual. "Display it," he commanded. The message appeared on the main screen. It was short, just 3 words. "Come and take it." The bridge fell silent. Officers from 6 different conquered species stared at the message in disbelief. Zextar felt his blood pressure rising. In all his years, no one had ever dared to mock the Empire like this. "Are they serious?" asked Commander Vexhall, his second in command. "Apparently," Zextar replied. "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure. We will teach these humans the price of defiance." Far across the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command center of the Liberty Bell, Earth's primary defense station. The station orbited high above Earth, its sensors watching the empty space around the solar system. But Jake knew that emptiness would not last much longer. "Captain," Lieutenant Amy Brooks called from her station, "we're getting reports from our deep space observers. The Empire's fleet just entered hyperspace. They're coming." Jake nodded calmly. He had been expecting this moment for 20 years. "How long until they arrive?" "Approximately 6 hours, sir." "Good. Send word to Admiral Carter. Tell her it's time to begin final preparations." On the surface of Earth, in the underground bunkers. Beneath Colorado, Admiral Lisa Carter reviewed the final intelligence reports. The Empire was bringing everything they had. 50,000 warships. Weapons that could crack planets. Warriors from dozens of different worlds. "Ma'am," her aide said nervously, "are you sure about this plan?" "The numbers don't look good." Lisa smiled. "The numbers never look good when you're fighting the Empire. That's why no one has ever beaten them before." "But ma'am," relaxed Lieutenant, "the Empire thinks they know everything about warfare. They're about to learn that humans fight differently." Above ground, in the great cities of Earth, something strange was happening. The evacuation was proceeding smoothly, but there was no panic. People moved to the underground shelters with calm determination. Children asked their parents questions about the aliens coming to fight them, and the adults answered with steady voices. Alex Turner, a news reporter, stood in Times Square as the last civilians disappeared into the subway tunnels that led to the deep shelters. He spoke into his camera with wonder. "I've covered wars and disasters for 15 years, he said, "but I've never seen anything like this. It's as if the entire planet has been preparing for this moment. There's no fear here. If anything, people seem almost excited." In space, the crew of the human frigate Defiant watched their sensors carefully. Captain Steve Baker had positioned his ship at the edge of the solar system, where they could observe the Empire's arrival without being seen. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting the first hyperspace signatures. They're bigger than we expected." Steve nodded. "How big?" "Some of those ships are the size of small moons, sir. I count at least 3 planet killers in the first wave." "Understood. Send the data to command. And remember, we're here to watch, not to fight." Not yet. Back on the Liberty Bell, Jake Morrison received the data from the Defiant and dozens of other observation posts. The Empire's fleet was massive beyond imagination. Any normal species would have surrendered immediately upon seeing such a force. But humans were not normal. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a message from the Empire fleet. It's for you personally." Jake smiled. "Put it through." Admiral Zextar's image appeared on the screen. The alien's face was a mixture of anger and confusion. "I am Admiral Zextar of the Galactic Empire. You will surrender immediately or face complete annihilation." Jake leaned back in his chair. "Admiral, I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. I have a message for you from our government. Speak." "The message is simple. We decline your offer." Zextar's eyes widened. "You decline? Do you understand what you face? We have conquered 400 star systems. We have weapons that can destroy your entire planet. Your species will be extinct within hours." "Maybe," Jake said calmly. "But we're going to make you work for it." The communication ended. On the Empire flagship, officers stared at each other, in shock. They had never encountered anything like this before. "Admiral," Commander Vexahal said quietly, "perhaps we should reconsider. This level of confidence suggests they may have weapons we don't know about." Zextar laughed harshly. "Impossible. Our intelligence is perfect. They have a few hundred ships at most. They're primitives clinging to a single world. Their confidence is just ignorance." But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered doubt. In 300 years of conquest, he had learned to trust his instincts. And his instincts were telling him something was wrong. On Earth, Dr. Rachel Stone sat in her laboratory, reviewing the final preparations. As head of the Xenobiology Division, she had spent years studying the Empire species. She knew their strengths, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their psychology. "The Empire has never lost a battle," she said to her assistant. "They don't even understand what losing means. That's going to be their greatest weakness." In the Deep Space Monitoring Station on Pluto, Commander Ben Rogers watched the Empire fleet emerge from hyperspace. The sight was terrifying. Thousands upon thousands of massive warships, their hull lights creating a second constellation in the darkness. "My God," whispered his sensor operator. "How are we supposed to fight that?" Ben smiled grimly. "We're not going to fight them. We're going to teach them." His fingers moved across his console, sending a coded message to every human ship and station in the solar system. The message was simple. Package delivered. The trap is set. Across the solar system, from the innermost planets to the farthest observation posts, humans received the message. In every ship, on every station, in every underground bunker, people smiled. The Empire had come to conquer them. But the Empire was about to learn that conquering humanity was not the same as conquering any other species. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other, learning from every defeat, adapting to every challenge. Now they would face their greatest test, not as Americans or Chinese or Europeans, but as humans. One species, one mind, one purpose. The Empire's fleet moved deeper into the solar system, their sensors detecting the pathetic few hundred human ships that dared to oppose them. Admiral Zextar felt his confidence returning. This would be over quickly. He had no idea that he was flying into the most carefully prepared trap in galactic history. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty Bell, watching the Empire's mighty fleet approach. His crew looked nervous, but Jake felt only calm determination. "All stations, this is Morrison," he said into his communicator. "Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting to show the galaxy that freedom's worth any price. Let's give them a lesson they'll never forget. The trap was set. The Empire was coming, and humanity was ready." The Empire's fleet filled the space around Earth like a dark cloud. Admiral Zextar stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. 50,000 warships in perfect formation. The sight had broken the will of every species they had ever encountered. "Look at them," he said to his officers. "So few ships, so small. They should be begging for mercy by now." Commander Vexhall studied the human fleet formations. "Admiral, their positioning is unusual. They're not trying to protect their planet. They're spread out across the entire solar system. Cowards, Zextar replied. They know they cannot win, so they scatter like frightened animals. It matters not. We will hunt them down one by one. On the human frigate Defiant, Captain Steve Baker watched the Empire's massive ships move into their attack formation. The formation was called the Hammer of Dominion, and it had never failed. The Empire's ships arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around Earth, with the largest ships at the center and smaller vessels forming protective layers around them. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered, "they're even bigger up close. That flagship must be 20 miles long." Steve nodded grimly. "Size isn't everything, Lieutenant. Remember what they taught us in the academy. The bigger they are, the harder they fall." But even Steve felt a chill as he watched the Empire's weapons begin to charge. Energy readings off the scale. Weapons that could turn mountains into dust. Ships that had conquered entire star systems. Deep. In the Empire's fleet, General Kethfor of the Saurian hegemony addressed his warriors over the communication system. His people had ruled 200 worlds before the Empire conquered them, and they had never forgotten the taste of battle. "Warriors," he roared, "today we face the humans. They are weak, primitive creatures who have never left their single world. They know nothing of real war. We will show them why the Empire is supreme." His soldiers cheered, their battle cries echoing through the ship. The Saurians were proud warriors, and they looked forward to adding another victory to their long list of conquests. But on the stealth ship Ghost Protocol, Commander Ben Rogers was listening to every word. Human technology had cracked the Empire's communication codes years ago. The Empire had no idea that their every conversation was being recorded and analyzed. "Interesting," Ben said to his communications officer. "They're treating this like a standard conquest. No special preparations, no unusual tactics. They think we're just another primitive species. Isn't that good for us, sir?" Ben smiled coldly. "It's perfect. They have no idea what they're walking into." On Earth, Dr. Rachel Stone was in her laboratory, but she wasn't working on weapons or defenses. She was studying psychology. The Empire's greatest weakness wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their mindset. "They've never lost," she explained to her research team. "In 800 years of conquest, they've never faced a species that could adapt to their methods. They fight the same way every time because it always works." "But what if it doesn't work this time?" asked her assistant. "Then they'll panic. The Empire's entire structure is built on the idea that they're invincible. Take that away, and they'll collapse from within." Meanwhile, Admiral Lisa Carter was in the Deep Command bunker, coordinating with defense forces across the solar system. Her screens showed the positions of every human ship, every weapon platform, every hidden asset that the Empire couldn't detect. "Status report," she called out. "All sleeper units are in position," reported Colonel Amy Walsh. "The Empire's sensors can't tell the difference between our drones and regular asteroids." "Good. What about the factory ships?" "Hidden behind Jupiter and Saturn. They're producing ammunition and replacement parts around the clock." Lisa nodded. The Empire thought they were fighting a few hundred human ships. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this battle for decades. On the Empire flagship, Admiral Zextar was growing impatient. The humans should have surrendered by now. The sight of his fleet should have been enough to break their spirit. "Send them another message," he ordered. "Tell them this is their last chance to surrender." The message was transmitted to every human, ship and station in the solar system. It was simple: surrender now or face annihilation. The response came from Captain Jake Morrison on the Liberty Bell. His image appeared on the Empire's main screen, and he was smiling. "Admiral Zextar," Jake said calmly, "we appreciate the offer, but we're going to have to pass. You see, we have a policy about bullies. We don't surrender to them." Zextar's face darkened. "You call the Empire bullies? We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. We bring order to chaos, civilization to primitive worlds. You bring slavery." Jake replied, "You destroy cultures, enslave populations, and call it progress. We've seen what you did to the other species. We won't let you do it to us. Then you will die," Zextar snarled. "All of you. Your species will be extinct within the hour." Jake's smile never wavered. "Maybe, but we're going to make you remember this day for the rest of your lives." The communication ended. On the Empire flagship, officers from different species muttered among themselves. The humans' confidence was disturbing. It didn't make sense. "Admiral," said Commander Vexahol, "perhaps we should probe their defenses. First, this level of confidence suggests silence." Zextar roared, "I will not be lectured by primitives. Begin the attack. Target their orbital defenses first. Show them the power of the Empire." The first wave of Empire ships moved forward, their weapons charging. Energy beams that could melt steel began to glow along their hulls. The attack was about to begin, but on the human ships there was no panic. Crews went about their duties with calm efficiency. Weapons were charged, shields were raised, and final preparations were made. On the destroyer Yorktown, Captain Ryan Mitchell addressed his crew over the intercom. "All hands, this is the captain. You all know what we're facing. The Empire thinks they can scare us into surrender. They think we're just another species that will kneel before their power. They're wrong." His crew cheered, their voices echoing through the ship. These were men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They were ready dot in the asteroid belt. Thousands of hidden drone ships waited in silence. They looked like ordinary rocks, but each one was packed with enough explosives to cripple an Empire warship. The Empire sensors couldn't detect them because they weren't designed to look for weapons. Disguised as space debris, Dr. Kevin Ross, the architect of the Sleeper program, watched from his hidden control center. "Remember," he told his team, "we only get one chance at this. The Empire will adapt quickly once they realize what we're doing. We need to make the first strike count." On the Empire ships, warriors from a dozen different species prepared for battle. The Saurians sharpened their claws. The Vorthan checked their energy weapons. The Nexari synchronized their hive mind communications. Each species fought according to their own traditions and methods. The Empire had conquered them all, but they still maintained their individual fighting styles. This diversity was supposed to be their strength. They had no idea it was about to become their greatest weakness. Admiral Zextar watched the tactical display as his ships moved into attack position. The human fleet was pathetically small. A few 100 ships against 50,000. This would be the shortest battle in Empire history. "All ships," he commanded, "begin the attack. Show these humans the price of defiance." The first Empire ships opened fire, their weapons lighting up the darkness of space. Energy beams lanced toward the human orbital defenses, and explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. But as the light faded, Admiral Zextar saw something that made his blood run cold. The humans were still there, still fighting. And they were smiling. "Captain." Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system, calm and confident. "Is that your best shot?" The Empire's first attack tore through Earth's outer defenses like a hurricane. Orbital platforms exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Defense satellites crumpled under the assault. Admiral Zextar watched the destruction with satisfaction. "Excellent," he said to his officers. "Their defenses are falling as expected. They should surrender within minutes." But the expected surrender call never came. Instead, Captain Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system. calm and almost amused. "Admiral, you just destroyed about $1 billion worth of our old equipment. I hope you're proud of yourself." Zextar's eyes narrowed. "Old equipment? The stuff we were planning to replace anyway. Thanks for saving us the demolition costs." On the Empire flagship, confusion spread among the officers. This wasn't how conquered species were supposed to respond. They should be terrified, begging for mercy, offering to surrender. "Admiral," Commander Vexahol said nervously, "perhaps we should reconsider our approach." "Their confidence suggests. Their confidence is meaningless," Zextar snapped. "Continue the attack. Target their remaining orbital installations." But as the Empire fleet moved deeper into the solar system, something strange began to happen. The asteroids around them started to move not at first. It was just a few small rocks drifting out of their normal orbits. The Empire's sensors registered them as space debris, nothing more. But then the rocks began to accelerate in the hidden control center on Ceres. Dr. Kevin Ross watched his screens with growing excitement. Sleeper units are responding perfectly. The Empire has no idea what's coming. Colonel Amy Walsh stood beside him, coordinating the attack. "How many units do we have in position?" 12,000, Kevin replied. "Each one disguised as a normal asteroid. The Empire's sensors can't tell the difference." "Then let's give them a surprise they'll never forget." The first sleeper drone struck an Empire destroyer without warning. The ship's crew had barely a second to register the incoming object before it slammed into their hull. The explosion tore through 3 decks, and the mighty warship began to list to one side. "What was that?" shouted General Kethfer from his command ship. "Unknown, sir." It appeared to be an asteroid, but asteroids don't move at attack speeds. Before he could respond, another sleeper struck a nearby cruiser, then another, and another. Across the Empire fleet, ships began reporting impacts from objects that shouldn't exist. Admiral Zextar stared at his tactical display in growing horror. Red warning lights were appearing all over his fleet. Ships were reporting hull breaches, system failures, and casualties. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our sensors show nothing but space debris." "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the debris is moving under its own power. These aren't asteroids. They're weapons." On the Liberty Bell, Captain Jake Morrison coordinated the sleeper attack with calm precision. Each drone was controlled by advanced AI that could adapt to enemy movements and find the weakest points in their defenses. "Target the big ships first," he ordered. "Let's see how tough they really are." The Empire's massive flagship ships, designed to intimidate enemies with their size, suddenly found that same size working against them. They were too large to maneuver quickly, too slow to avoid the small, fast-moving sleeper drones. A sleeper drone struck the Sovereign Dawn's engine section, and Admiral Zextar felt his mighty ship shudder. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout the bridge. "Damage report," he shouted. "Engine 3 is offline, sir. Hull breach on decks 40 through 45. We're losing atmosphere." For the first time in his 300 years of service, Admiral Zextar felt something he had never experienced before: fear. But the sleeper attack was just the beginning. As the Empire fleet tried to deal with the drone assault, the real human fleet finally revealed itself. Captain Steve Baker on the Defiant received his orders and smiled grimly. "All right, people. Time to show them what human ships can do." The human fleet didn't fight like any enemy the Empire had ever faced. Instead of forming traditional battle lines, they moved like a school of fish, each ship perfectly coordinated with every other ship. Commander Sarah Blake led a squadron of fighters in a daring attack run against an Empire battleship. Her pilots flew in perfect formation, their movements synchronized as if they shared a single mind. "Remember," she told her pilots, "we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to confuse them, make them think we're everywhere at once. The human fighters darted between the massive Empire ships like angry insects, striking at weak points and vanishing before return fire could find them. The Empire's weapons, designed to fight large ships in traditional formations, couldn't track the small, fast-moving targets. General Kefar watched in frustration as his proud Saurian warriors struggled to fight an enemy that wouldn't stand still and fight properly. "This is not honorable combat," he roared. "They fight like cowards, striking and running instead of meeting us in honest battle." But on the human ships, there was no talk of honor. There was only the cold calculation of victory. Lieutenant Commander Nina Price, aboard the stealth ship Phantom, coordinated a new type of attack. While the Empire was focused on the obvious threats, her ship and others, like it, had been moving through their formation undetected. "Target the command ships," she ordered. "Let's cut off their communications." The stealth ships struck at the Empire's command and control vessels, disrupting their ability to coordinate their massive fleet. Suddenly, the Empire's greatest advantage, their overwhelming numbers, became meaningless when they couldn't communicate with each other. Admiral Zextar found himself cut off from most of his fleet. His communication systems were jammed, his sensors were being interfered with, and his ships were taking damage from enemies he couldn't see. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "We have 50,000 ships. They have a few hundred." "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the outer solar system. It appears they have more ships than we initially detected." "How many more?" "Unknown, sir. Our sensors are being jammed, but preliminary estimates suggest thousands." Zextar felt his world crumbling around him. For 800 years, the Empire had relied on superior intelligence, overwhelming force, and the fear they inspired in their enemies. Now, for the first time, they were facing an enemy that had prepared for them. On the carrier Yorktown, Captain Ryan Mitchell launched the next phase of the human plan. The ship's massive hangar bays opened, and thousands of small craft poured out. But these weren't fighters or bombers. They were something new entirely. "Repair drones are away," he reported, "beginning battlefield maintenance operations." While the Empire's ships fought desperately to survive, the human fleet was being constantly repaired and resupplied by automated systems. Damaged ships were quickly fixed, weapons were reloaded, and fuel was replenished. Dr. Tony Clark, monitoring the battle from his laboratory, watched his theories come to life. "The Empire fights like traditional warriors," he explained to his team. "They expect a battle to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But we're fighting like a living organism. We adapt, we heal, we grow stronger." The Empire's formation, once so impressive and intimidating, began to break apart. Ships tried to regroup, but the constant attacks and communication disruptions made coordination impossible. Admiral Zextar realized with growing horror that he was losing the battle. For the first time in Empire history, their mighty fleet was being defeated by a supposedly primitive species. "All ships," he commanded, "fall back to defensive positions. We need to regroup and reassess." But the human fleet didn't give them time to regroup. They pressed their attack, moving with perfect coordination despite the chaos of battle. Every human ship and crew member worked toward a single goal. Victory. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty Bell, watching the Empire fleet struggle to maintain formation. His tactical display showed red icons throughout the enemy fleet, damaged ships, disabled vessels, and growing confusion. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're intercepting Empire communications. They're talking about retreating." Jake smiled. "Already? We're just getting started." He opened a channel to the Empire flagship. Admiral Zextar's image appeared. On the screen, his face showing shock and disbelief. "Admiral," Jake said calmly, "I believe you wanted to teach us about the price of defiance. How's that working out for you?" Zextar's reply was filled with rage and confusion. "This is impossible. You're primitives. You should not be able to resist us." "We're not resisting you," Jake replied. "We're defeating you. There's a difference." The communication ended, leaving Admiral Zextar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his mighty fleet continued to take damage from an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. For the first time in 800 years, the Galactic Empire was learning what it felt like to lose. The battle had been raging for 6 hours, and Admiral Zextar could no longer recognize his once mighty fleet. Ships that had conquered star systems were now limping through space, their hulls torn open by weapons that shouldn't exist. His perfect formation had dissolved into chaos. "Admiral," Commander Vexahal reported, his voice shaking, "we've lost contact with over half our fleet. The humans are jamming our communications, disrupting our sensors, and attacking from directions we didn't know existed." Zextar stared at the tactical display, trying to understand what was happening. The Empire had studied human technology. For months before the attack, they knew exactly what weapons humanity possessed, what ships they had, what defenses they could mount. They had been wrong about everything. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the humans are deploying some kind of new weapon. Energy readings are off the scale." On the human battle cruiser Intrepid, Dr. Tony Clark watched his greatest creation come online. The Void Crusher was the Empire's most feared weapon, a device that created artificial black holes to tear apart enemy ships. The Empire had used it to destroy entire fleets, but Tony had spent 5 years studying captured Empire technology, and he had learned something important. Their own weapons could be turned against them. "Gravitational field generators are online," he reported to Captain Lisa Murphy. "We're ready to redirect their next Void Crusher attack." "Understood, Doctor. Let's show them what happens when humans get hold of their toys." The Empire flagship charged its Void Crusher, the weapon that had ended countless battles. Admiral Zextar watched with grim satisfaction as the artificial black hole formed in space, its gravitational pull beginning to tear at the nearby human ships. But instead of fleeing in terror, the human ships did something unprecedented. They began to move toward the black hole. "What are they doing?" Zextar demanded. "Are they committing suicide?" His question was answered when the human ships activated their own gravitational field generators. The artificial black hole suddenly changed direction, its destructive force turning back toward the Empire fleet. "Impossible," shouted General Kethvar from his command ship. "They cannot control a Void Crusher. The technology is beyond them." But the redirected black hole was already tearing through the Empire's formation, destroying 3 battleships before. The weapon finally dissipated. The Empire's ultimate weapon had been turned against them. Commander Sarah Blake, leading her fighter squadron, watched the destruction with professional satisfaction. "That's what happens when you bring a knife to a gunfight," she told her pilots. "Especially when we know how to use your knife better than you do." The human fleet pressed their advantage, using the Empire's confusion to strike at critical targets. But this wasn't random destruction. It was surgical precision. Every attack was calculated to maximize damage while minimizing human losses. Lieutenant Commander Nina Price, aboard the stealth ship Phantom, coordinated the next phase of the attack. Her ship and others, like it, had been moving through the Empire, fleet undetected, gathering intelligence and preparing for this moment. "All stealth units, this is Phantom. Execute Operation Backstab." Throughout the Empire fleet, critical systems began to fail. Engines shut down without warning. Weapons systems went offline. Life support flickered and died. The Empire ships, which had seemed invincible hours before, were now helpless in space. How is this possible? Admiral Zexstar demanded. Our ships are the most advanced in the Hesiod galaxy. Sir, his chief engineer reported, it appears the humans have been infiltrating our systems. They've planted some kind of computer virus that's spreading through our network. Dr. Michelle Gray, head of human intelligence, smiled as she watched the virus spread through the Empire's computer systems. 20 years of preparation, she said to her team. 20 years of studying their technology, learning their weaknesses, and planning for this moment. The virus wasn't designed to destroy the Empire's ships. It was designed to make them helpless. Weapons that couldn't fire, engines that couldn't run, communications that couldn't connect. The mighty Empire fleet was becoming a collection of floating scrap metal. But the humans weren't finished. As the Empire struggled with their failing systems, massive shapes began to emerge from the shadows of the outer planets. Ships larger than anything the Empire had ever seen, their hulls gleaming with fresh construction. Captain Ryan Mitchell, commanding the factory ship Forge, watched with satisfaction as his fleet of construction vessels revealed themselves. While the Empire had been focused on Earth's defenses, humanity had been building the largest war machine in galactic history. Admiral Carter, he reported, all factory ships are online. We're producing weapons, ammunition, and replacement parts. At maximum capacity, the fleet will never run out of supplies. Admiral Lisa Carter, coordinating the battle from her deep underground bunker, felt a moment of pride. This was what made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. They didn't just fight, they planned, they prepared, they adapted. Excellent, Captain. Begin Phase 4 of the operation. The factory ships weren't just producing supplies. They were producing new weapons, designed specifically to counter Empire technology. Missiles that could penetrate Empire shields. Energy weapons that could overload Empire defenses. And most importantly, they were producing them faster than the Empire could destroy them. General Cathvar watched in disbelief as swarms of human missiles tore through his fleet's defenses. This is not warfare, he roared. This is madness. They fight without honor, without tradition, without respect for the proper way of battle. But on the human ships, there was no talk of honor or tradition. There was only the cold, efficient business of victory. Commander Ben Rogers, monitoring Empire communications from his stealth ship, listened to the growing panic in the alien voices. They're starting to break, he reported. The Empire's command structure is falling apart. They've never faced an enemy that could match their technology and exceed their tactics. The Empire's greatest strength, their diversity, have conquered. Species was becoming their greatest weakness. Each species fought according to their own traditions and methods, but they couldn't coordinate with each other when their communications were jammed and their command structure was failing. The Saurians wanted to charge straight at the human fleet in glorious battle. The Vorthans preferred to use their superior firepower from long range. The Nexari tried to coordinate through their hive mind, but the human jammers were disrupting their mental links. Meanwhile, every human ship and crew member worked toward a single goal. They moved like parts of a vast machine, each component perfectly synchronized with every other component. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty Bell, watching the Empire fleet struggle to maintain cohesion. His tactical display showed a beautiful sight, the once mighty Empire formation dissolving into chaos. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're intercepting Empire transmissions. They're talking about calling for reinforcements. Jake smiled grimly. Too late for that. Nina, what's the status of Operation Blockade? From the stealth ship Phantom, Nina Price's voice crackled over the communicator. All Empire supply lines have been severed, sir. Their reinforcement fleets are dealing with technical difficulties throughout their territory. While the Empire had been focused on conquering Earth, human agents had been sabotaging their infrastructure throughout the galaxy. Supply ships had mysterious engine failures. Communication relays stopped working. Reinforcement fleets found themselves stranded without fuel or supplies. The Empire was learning that humans didn't just fight the battle in front of them. They fought the entire war, on every front, with every weapon at their disposal. Admiral. Zexstar finally understood the scope of what was happening. This wasn't just a battle for Earth. This was a carefully planned operation to cripple the entire Empire. The humans hadn't just prepared to defend themselves. They had prepared to win. All ships, he commanded, his voice heavy with defeat, prepare for emergency retreat. We cannot win this battle. But as his surviving ships tried to form up for withdrawal, they discovered one final surprise. The humans had been hurting them, using their attacks to drive the Empire fleet into a predetermined position. They were surrounded. Captain Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system, calm and professional. Admiral Zexstar, this is Captain Morrison. I believe you wanted to retreat. Unfortunately, that won't be possible. Zexstar stared at his tactical display in horror. Human ships had appeared on all sides, cutting off every escape route. But these weren't the same ships that had been fighting them all along. These were fresh vessels, undamaged and fully armed. How many ships do you have? He whispered. Enough, Jake replied. You see, Admiral, you made a critical error. You assumed we would fight like every other species you've conquered. You thought we would put all our forces in one place and hope for the best. But we didn't do that. We spread our fleet throughout the galaxy, watching you, learning from you, preparing for you. What you're fighting here isn't our entire military. It's just the part we decided to show you. The truth hit Admiral Zexstar like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just defended Earth. They had set a trap that spanned multiple star systems. They had been planning this for decades, Ma. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Zexstar sat in his damaged command chair. Staring at the report, he was required to submit to Empire High Command. His once magnificent fleet was scattered across space, some ships barely functioning, others towed by the few vessels that still had working engines. Of the 50,000 ships that had arrived at Earth, less than 30,000 were still capable of hyperspace travel. The rest were floating debris or had been captured by human forces. It was the greatest military disaster in Empire history. Admiral, Commander Vexahall said quietly, the High Command is demanding your immediate report. They want to know how. We suffered such losses against a primitive species. Zexstar laughed bitterly. Primitive? They made fools of us, Vexahall. Complete fools. He began to dictate his report, each word tasting like poison in his mouth. To Empire High Command, the human species cannot be conquered through conventional means. They do not fight like any enemy we have previously encountered. Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of the Liberty Bell, checking on his crew. The battle was over, but its effects would be felt across the galaxy for years to come. Captain, Lieutenant Amy Brooks called from her station. We're receiving communications from 17 different star systems. Word of our victory is spreading fast. What kind of communications? Jake asked. Mostly from species under Empire. Control. They want to know if what they heard is true. Did we really defeat an Empire fleet? Jake smiled. Tell them it's true. And tell them something else. They don't have to stay conquered if they don't want to. In the deep command bunkers beneath Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter was coordinating humanity's next moves. The victory over the Empire fleet was just the beginning. Now came the harder task of building a new order in the galaxy. Ma'am, Colonel Amy Walsh reported, our stealth ships are reporting massive unrest throughout Empire territory. 17 conquered species have declared independence in the last 2 days. Good, Lisa replied. The Empire's power was built on fear. Take away the fear. and the whole structure collapses. Dr. Rachel Stone joined the briefing, carrying data tablets filled with psychological profiles. The Empire's command structure is in complete chaos, she reported. They've never lost a major battle before. They don't know how to process defeat. Their entire identity was built on being invincible, she continued. Now that's gone. Some of their commanders are talking about massive reforms. Others are calling for revenge attacks. But most are just confused and scared. On the bridge of his damaged flagship, Admiral Zextar received new orders from Empire High Command. He read them twice, unable to believe what he was seeing. They want us to return immediately for debriefing, he told Commander Vexal, and they're promoting Admiral Kethron to lead a new attack against Earth. Sir, with respect, Admiral Kethron has never faced the humans. He doesn't understand what we're dealing with. Zextar nodded grimly. That's exactly why they chose him. High Command thinks our defeat was due to cowardice or incompetence. They believe overwhelming force is still the answer. But as the Empire prepared for their response, humanity was already moving to the next phase of their plan. Captain Steve Baker, commanding the human frigate Defiant, led a small fleet on a very special mission. All ships, this is Baker, he announced. Remember, we're not here to conquer anyone. We're here to offer a choice. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace in the Kepler system, home to the Altarian Republic, one of the Empire's most recent conquests. The Altarians had been enslaved only 5 years earlier, and their spirit was not yet broken. On the surface of Altair Prime, President Yera Moonwhisper received an impossible message. This is Captain Steve Baker of the Earth Defense Force. We're here to discuss your independence. Within hours, similar messages were being received on dozens of worlds throughout Empire space. Human ships appeared in system after system, not as conquerors, but as liberators. Dr. Michelle Gray, head of human intelligence, coordinated the liberation operations from her command center. Remember, she told her agents, we're not building an empire of our own. We're giving these species the chance to choose their own destiny. The Empire's response was swift and predictable. Admiral Kethron, commanding a new fleet of 40,000 ships, headed for Earth with orders to restore Imperial prestige. But this time, the humans were ready for him. Commander Ben Rogers, aboard the stealth ship Ghost Protocol, intercepted Kethron's communications weeks before the fleet arrived. Admiral Carter, he reported, they're coming back. But they're making the same mistakes as before. Good, Lisa replied. Let them come. This time, we'll make sure the lesson sticks. The Second Empire fleet arrived at Earth expecting to face a weakened enemy. Instead, they found a human force twice the size of the previous battle, supported by ships from 20 different liberated species. Admiral Kethron stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Where did all these ships come from? His question was answered by Captain Jake Morrison from the Liberty Bell. Admiral, meet our new allies. Turns out, a lot of species don't like being enslaved. Who would have thought? The second battle was even more one-sided than the first. The Empires. Tactics hadn't changed, but humanity's capabilities had grown exponentially. With allies providing resources and support, the human fleet was larger, better equipped, and completely prepared for everything the Empire could throw at them. Admiral Kethron's fleet lasted exactly 4 hours before he was forced to surrender. This time, there was no escape, no retreat. The Empire's second greatest fleet was completely destroyed or captured. As news of the second defeat spread throughout the galaxy, the Empire's control began to collapse entirely. Species that had been conquered centuries ago rose in rebellion. Trade routes were disrupted. Colonial governors found themselves cut off from support. On Earth, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Liberty Bell, watching ships from a dozen different species dock at the newly expanded orbital stations. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was leading that change. "Sir," Commander Sarah Blake joined him at the observation window. "We're receiving a communication from the Empire. It's not a battle fleet this time. It's a diplomatic mission." Jake raised an eyebrow. "The Empire wants to talk?" "Apparently. They're requesting a ceasefire and peace negotiations." Jake considered this for a moment, then smiled. "Tell them we'll consider it. But the negotiations happen here, on our terms, in our space." "And, sir, what should we tell the other species who are asking to join our alliance?" Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about the future. Humanity had proven they couldn't be conquered. Now they had the chance to build something better than an empire, a true alliance of free species. "Tell them the same thing we told the Empire," he said. "We don't force anyone to do anything. But if they want to be free, if they want to build something better than what came before, then we're here to help." 6 months later, representatives from over 200 species gathered on Earth for the signing of the Galactic Freedom Charter. The Empire still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self, reduced to barely 50 star systems and no longer able to threaten its neighbors. Admiral Zextar, now retired and living in exile, watched the ceremony from his small apartment. On a distant world, he had written his memoirs, warning future generations about the dangers of home, underestimating humanity. The final line of his book read, "The Empire thought it could conquer Earth by force. We learned too late that humans cannot be conquered. They can only be freed. And once free, they will ensure that no one else suffers the chains of slavery." As the ceremony concluded, Captain Jake Morrison addressed the assembled delegates. "Today marks the beginning of a new age," he said. "An age where no species will be forced to kneel to another, where differences will be celebrated, not suppressed, where freedom is not a privilege to be granted, but a right to be protected." The crowd erupted in cheers from beings of every shape and size imaginable. The Empire's age of conquest was over. The age of freedom had begun, and somewhere in space, on the bridge of a human exploration vessel, new crews prepared to venture into the unknown corners of the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as explorers. Not to enslave, but to invite. Not to destroy, but to build. The humans had smirked when the Empire deployed its fleet. Now the entire galaxy was learning why. The alarm rang through the ship like a death cry. Captain Jake Morrison ran down the metal hallway, his boots hitting the floor hard. Behind him, other crew members rushed to their stations. The red lights flashed on and off, making everything look like a nightmare. "What do we have?" Jake shouted as he reached the bridge. "3 alien ships, sir," said his second officer, Lieutenant Ben Parker. "They're coming fast from the star system ahead." Jake looked at the big screen. 3 dark shapes moved toward them like hungry wolves. He had seen ships like these before. They belonged to the Galactic Council, the same aliens who had kicked humanity out of their homes over 100 years ago. "Wake up the fleet," Jake ordered. "Tell everyone to get ready to jump to light speed." The human fleet was huge but slow. Thousands of ships filled the empty space around them. Most were old civilian transports carrying families, children, and old people. These were the last humans in the galaxy, and they had been running for more than a century. Jake's ship, the Avas, Defiant, was one of the few military vessels left. It was small compared to the alien warships, but it was fast and had good weapons. More importantly, it had a crew that would fight to the death to protect the civilian ships. "Sir, the New Hope is having engine trouble," reported Communications Officer Lisa Carter. "They can't jump with the rest of us." Jake felt his stomach drop. The New Hope carried 5,000 people, including many children. If they left it behind, those people would die. "How long until the aliens reach us?" he asked. 20 minutes, sir." Jake looked at the screen again. The alien ships were getting bigger. He could see their weapons charging up, ready to fire. The Galactic Council never gave warnings. They just attacked. "Get me Captain Amy Blake on the Mercy," Jake said. Amy's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, like everyone else in the fleet. Her medical ship had been working non-stop for weeks, treating sick people and delivering babies. But her eyes were still strong. "Jake, we can't leave them behind," she said before he could speak. "I know. How many people can your ship take?" "Maybe 1,000 if we pack them tight." "But Jake, there's no time to transfer everyone." Jake nodded. He had made this choice before, and it never got easier. Sometimes you had to sacrifice a few to save many. But today felt different. Today he was tired of running. "Amy, get your ship ready to take refugees. Ben, tell the fleet to prepare for emergency jump, but keep the engines warm. We might need to run fast. Sir, what are you planning?" Ben asked. Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "I'm going to buy them some time." The Defiant turned toward the alien ships. Jake knew it was probably suicide, but he was tired of watching his people die while running away. At least this time, he would make the aliens pay for their cruelty. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's speakers. "We're going to attack the alien ships. I won't lie to you. We probably won't survive, but we're going to give our people time to escape. For Earth, for humanity." The crew worked faster than ever. Everyone knew what this meant. They were not just fighting for the new hope. They were fighting for the memory of Earth, for the billions of humans who had already died, and for the hope that someday their children might find a new home. Ryan Blake sat in his scout ship, watching the Defiant charge toward the alien vessels. His wife Amy was getting ready to save as many people as she could. His daughter Emma was somewhere in the fleet, probably scared, but trying to be brave. "Dad, are they really going to attack?" Emma's voice came through the radio. "Yes, sweetheart. Captain Morrison is buying us time. Can we help them?" Ryan wanted to say yes. He wanted to turn his small ship around and join the fight. But his job was to protect the fleet, not to die in a hopeless battle. "We help by keeping everyone safe," he said. "That's what Captain Morrison wants." The first alien ship fired. Bright energy beams shot across space toward the Defiant. Jake's ship moved fast, dodging most of the shots. But one beam hit the back of the ship, making it shake hard. "Hull breach." "On deck 5, someone shouted. "Keep firing," Jake ordered. The Defiant's weapons hit the closest alien ship. For a moment, Jake felt hope. Maybe they could actually win this fight. But then the other two alien ships joined the attack. More energy beams filled the space around the Defiant. The ship's shields were failing. Jake knew they had maybe 5 minutes before the ship would break apart. "Sir, the New Hope is ready to?" "Jump," Lisa reported. "Good. Tell them to go." "Tell the whole fleet to go. What about us?" Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was still working, still fighting, even though they all knew how this would end. They were the best people he had ever known. "We keep fighting until they're all safe." But then something impossible happened. The long-range sensors picked up a new signal. It was coming from the edge of the star system, moving fast toward them. "What is that?" Ben asked. Lisa worked at her station, trying to identify the signal. Her face went white. "Sir, it's a human ship. It's broadcasting on old Earth military frequencies." Jake stared at the screen. That was impossible. All human military ships had been destroyed or were part of the exile fleet. There were no other ships out there. "Are you sure?" "Yes, sir. It's big, really big. And it's coming this way fast." The alien ships had noticed the new signal too. They stopped firing at the Defiant and turned toward the unknown ship. Jake used the brake to move his ship closer to the fleet. "This is impossible," he said quietly. But, impossible or not, something was coming. Something that might change everything for humanity. Jake just hoped they would live long enough to find out what it was. A mystery ship was still too far away to see clearly, but its signal was getting stronger. And for the first time in years, Jake Morrison felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. The mystery ship came out of light speed like a metal mountain. Jake Morrison stared at his screen, not believing what he saw. The ship was massive, bigger than anything in the Exile fleet. Its hull was covered in scars and patches, like it had been through 100 battles. "My God," whispered Ben Parker. "Look at the size of that thing." The ship's weapons were already charging, but they were not pointed at the human fleet. They were aimed at the 3 alien council ships that had been attacking the Defiant. "This is Admiral Helen Parker of the UES Retribution?" came a voice over the radio. It was an old woman's voice, but strong and clear. "Council ships, you have 30 seconds to leave this system, or we will destroy you." Jake's heart stopped. Admiral Parker had been dead for over a century. She had commanded the deep space mission that disappeared during the early days of the HFY. Exile. Everyone thought her ship had been destroyed. "Impossible," Lisa Carter said from her station. "Admiral Parker died when Earth fell." The council ships did not leave. Instead, they turned their weapons toward the Retribution. Jake had seen council ships fight before. They were fast and deadly. But he had never seen anything like what happened next. The Retribution fired. Its weapons were not like normal human weapons. They were different, more powerful. The energy beams were bright blue instead of red, and they moved faster than anything Jake had ever seen. The first council ship exploded in a ball of fire. The second one tried to run, but the Retribution's weapons followed it through space. The third ship managed to fire back, but its shots bounced off the Retribution's shields like rocks hitting a wall. In less than 5 minutes, all 3 council ships were destroyed. The Retribution had not even moved from its position. "Human fleet, this is Admiral Parker," the voice said again. "Please prepare to receive boarding parties. We have much to discuss." Jake looked at his crew. They all had the same shocked expression. The dead had come back to life, and they had saved the fleet. "Admiral Parker, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Defiant. We thought you were dead. I understand your confusion, Captain. We have been gone for a long time, but we are very much alive, and we have much to tell you." Small ships began leaving the Retribution. They were sleek and fast, unlike anything in the Exile fleet. As they got closer, Jake could see that they were not entirely human design. They had parts that looked alien, but not like council technology. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Parker's voice continued, "please gather your fleet commanders. We need to meet as soon as possible." Jake gave orders to his crew, then took a shuttle to the New Hope. The big transport ship had become the unofficial meeting place for the fleet leaders. As he flew toward it, he kept looking back at the Retribution. The ship was huge, but it moved like it was alive. The meeting room on the New Hope was packed. All the ship captains were there, along with Dr. Lisa Carter, the fleet's historian. Captain Amy Blake had come from her medical ship. Her husband Ryan was there too, along with their daughter Emma, who worked as a communications officer. When Admiral Parker entered the room, everyone went quiet. She was old, maybe 80 years. Old, but she walked like a soldier. Behind her came several other officers, including a man who looked like he had been through hell. "I am Colonel Steve Martinez," the man said. "I am Admiral Parker's second in command. I know you have questions. We will answer them all." Admiral Parker sat down slowly. Her eyes were tired, but they were also angry. 127. Years ago, my ship left Earth on a deep space mission, she began. We were supposed to find new worlds for humanity to colonize. Instead, we found something else. We found the truth about the Galactic Council. She paused and looked around the room. The Council has been lying to the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Humanity was not the first species they exiled. We were the 8th. The room erupted in shocked voices. Dr. Carter stood up. That's impossible. The Council's records show that humanity was a special case, a unique threat. The Council's records are lies, said a woman who had entered with Admiral Parker. I am Dr. Sandra Hayes, xenobiologist. For over a century, we have been studying the Council's history. Every 50 to 100 years, they identify a species that is becoming too powerful, too successful. They declare that species a threat and either destroy them or drive them into exile. Colonel Martinez activated a holographic display. It showed star maps with different colored regions. The red areas are systems that used to belong to exiled species. The Zephyrians were masters of engineering. The Harmonics were telepaths. The architects built most of the great structures in the galaxy. All of them were declared threats. All of them were destroyed or driven out. Jake felt sick. How many species? 7 before us. Each time, the Council took their territory and their technology. Each time, they grew stronger. Admiral Parker stood up again. But some of the exiled species survived. They have been hiding in the outer rim of the galaxy, waiting for a chance to fight back. We have spent the last century finding them, learning from them and preparing for this day. What day? Asked Captain Amy Blake. The day we stop running and start fighting back. The room went silent. For over a century, the exile fleet had been running from the Council. The idea of fighting back seemed impossible. You're talking about war, said Ryan Blake. We have civilians, children. We can't fight a war. We're already in a war, Colonel Martinez said. The Council has been hunting us for over a century. They will never stop. They will never let us live in peace. Dr. Hayes activated another display. The Council is already planning their next exile. The Kepler Confederation, 3 peaceful species that have formed a successful alliance. The Council has declared them a threat. They will be attacked within the next 6 months. How do you know this? Jake asked. Because we have been watching. Them, Admiral Parker said. Our ship has capabilities that the Council doesn't know about. We have been gathering intelligence for decades. Emma Blake, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. What do you want us to do? Admiral Parker looked at the young woman. We want you to help us save the Kepler Confederation. And in doing so, we want you to help us expose the Council's crimes to the entire galaxy. It's suicide, Jake said. The Council has thousands of ships. We have a few hundred. The Council has thousands of ships, Admiral Parker agreed. But they also have thousands of lies to hide. When the galaxy learns the truth about what the Council has done, many of those ships will turn against them. Colonel Martinez smiled. For the first time since entering the room, Captain Morrison, you have been running for over a century. How has that worked out for you? Jake felt anger rise in his chest. We've kept our people alive. Barely. Your ships are falling apart. Your people are dying of old age without ever seeing a real home. Your children are growing up with no hope for the future. That's enough, Amy Blake said, standing up. Don't you dare tell us how to protect our people. I'm not telling you how to protect them, Admiral Parker said calmly. I'm telling you how to give them a future. The Council will never stop hunting us. But if we can destroy their credibility, if we can turn the galaxy against them, then maybe our children can have the life we never had. The room fell silent again. Everyone was thinking about the same thing. Their children. The generation that had never known Earth, never known a real home. Show us, Jake said finally. "Show us what you've learned. Show us how we can fight back." Admiral Parker nodded. "Colonel Martinez, prepare the briefing materials. Dr. Hayes, contact the Retribution. Tell them to prepare for guests." She looked around the room one more time. "Ladies and gentlemen, the age of running is over. The age of fighting back has begun." As the meeting broke up, Jake looked out the window at the Retribution. The massive ship floated in space like a promise of hope. For the first time in his life, he began to believe that maybe, just maybe, humanity might actually have a chance. The ghost ship had returned, and with it, the possibility of going home. The Retribution was like nothing Jake Morrison had ever seen. As his shuttle docked with the massive ship, he felt small and amazed. The docking bay was huge, big enough to hold 20 ships like his. "Welcome aboard the Retribution, Captain Morrison," said a young officer who met him at the airlock. "I'm Lieutenant Peter Williams. The Admiral is waiting for you in the war room." Jake followed the officer through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were covered with metal plating that looked both human and alien. Some parts glowed with soft blue light, while others hummed with energy he did not recognize. "How many people are on this ship?" Jake asked. 437, Lieutenant Williams replied. "We started with 10,000 when we left Earth. Most of them died during the first 50 years of our journey." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What happened to them?" "War, Captain. We've been fighting the Council and their allies for over a century. Every battle cost us lives. But every battle also taught us something new." They entered a large room filled with holographic displays and star charts. Admiral Parker stood at the center, surrounded by officers from different species. Jake recognized some as human, but others were clearly alien. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Parker said, "meet our allies. This is Commander Zara, a Zephyrian engineer. Captain Fell is a harmonic telepath. And this is Builder Corin, one of the last architects." Jake stared at the aliens. He had not seen living members of these species since before the exile. "You're all supposed to be dead." "So are you," said Commander Zara. Her voice had a musical quality that made Jake's skin tingle. "Yet here we are, survivors of the Council's lies." Captain Thel stepped forward. He was tall and thin, with large eyes that seemed to see right through Jake. "Captain Morrison, I can sense your fear. You are afraid we are leading your people into a trap." "Can you blame me?" Jake asked. "For over a century, we've been told that aliens cannot be trusted." "The Council cannot be trusted," said Builder Corin. His voice was deep and rocky, like stones grinding together. "But not all aliens are part of the Council. Some of us are victims, just like you." Admiral Parker activated a holographic display showing a star map. "Captain Morrison, what I'm about to show you will change everything. You think you know about this galaxy." The display showed dozens of star systems, each marked with different colors. The red systems belong to exiled species. The blue systems belong to the Council. The green systems are neutral worlds that the Council has not yet targeted. Jake studied the map. There are more red systems than blue ones. Exactly. The Council has been systematically destroying or exiling every species that becomes too successful. They are not the protectors of galactic peace. They are parasites, growing fat on the deaths of entire civilizations. Dr. Nathan Cross, the ship's science officer, stepped forward. "Captain, we have proof. We have intercepted Council communications, recovered their secret files, and interviewed survivors from 6 different exiled species. The pattern is always the same." "What pattern?" Jake asked. "First, they identify a species that is growing too powerful or too successful. Then they spend decades preparing propaganda, convincing the galaxy that this species is dangerous. Finally, they launch a defensive war that destroys or exiles the target species. Admiral Parker pointed to a section of the map. Right now, they are preparing to target the Kepler Confederation. 3 peaceful species that have formed a successful alliance. The Council has already begun spreading rumors that they are planning to attack Council worlds. How do you know this? Because we have been watching them for decades, said Engineer Corinne Thompson. Our ship has stealth capabilities that the Council doesn't know about. We have been gathering intelligence, making contact with other survivors, and preparing for this moment. Jake looked around the room. What moment? The moment we stop running and start fighting back, Admiral Parker said. The moment we save the Kepler Confederation and expose the Council's crimes to the entire galaxy. That's impossible. The Council has thousands of ships. Even with your allies, we're outnumbered 100 to 1. Captain Thel stepped forward again. Captain Morrison, may I share something with you? Before Jake could answer, he felt a strange sensation in his mind. Suddenly, he could see images that were not his own. He saw Council ships attacking peaceful worlds. He saw entire species being loaded onto transport ships and sent into exile. He saw the Council leaders laughing as they divided up the territory of their victims. Stop, Jake said, holding his head. Stop that. The images faded. Captain Thel looked sad. I'm sorry, Captain, but you needed to see the truth. The Council is not just your enemy. They are the enemy of everyone who believes in freedom and peace. Jake sat down heavily. Even if everything you're saying is true, we still can't win a direct war against them. We don't need to win a direct war, Admiral. Parker said, we need to win a war of information. We need to show the galaxy what the Council really is. Builder Corin activated another display. The Council's power comes from fear and lies. They convince species to support them by claiming they are protecting the galaxy from dangerous enemies. But what happens when the galaxy learns that the Council has been manufacturing these enemies? Revolution, said Commander Zara. Every species that has been oppressed by the Council will rise up. Every world that has been forced to send troops and resources to fight the Council's wars will demand answers. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the human exile fleet. Thousands of ships carrying the last survivors of humanity. Children who had never seen Earth. Parents who had died without ever finding a new home. What are you asking us to do? He asked quietly. Help us save the Kepler Confederation, Admiral Parker said. Help us broadcast the truth about the Council's crimes to the entire galaxy. Help us start a revolution that will free every species from the Council's tyranny. And if we fail, then we die fighting instead of running. And maybe our children will have a chance to live free. Jake turned back to the group. My daughter Emma is barely 20 years old. She's never known anything but running and hiding. Sometimes I catch her looking at the stars, and I know she's wondering if she ever have a real home. She will, Captain Thel said softly. I can see it in her mind. She is strong, like her father. She will live to see humanity return to its rightful place in the galaxy. Can you really see the future? I can see possibilities. And I see a future where the Council falls, where the exiled species return home, where your daughter's children grow up on worlds they can call their own. Jake looked at each of the aliens in the room. A few months ago, he would have shot them on sight. Now, they were offering him something he had never dared to hope for, a chance to fight back. What do you need from us? He asked. Admiral Parker smiled. We need your fleet to help us reach the Kepler Confederation before the Council attacks. We need your people to help us broadcast the truth to every world in the galaxy. And we need your courage to stand up to the most powerful force in the galaxy. Jake thought about Amy and Emma, about the thousands of families in the exile fleet, about the billions of humans who had died without ever seeing justice for the Council's crimes. "Admiral Parker," he said, "humanity is ready to fight." The room erupted in cheers from humans and aliens alike. For the first time in over a century, the exiled species were united in a common cause. "Then let's go save the galaxy," Admiral Parker said. As Jake prepared to return to his ship, he looked back at the war room. The holographic displays showed the positions of thousands of ships, the locations of hidden bases, and the routes to the Kepler Confederation. It was the most ambitious military operation in galactic history. But for the first time since the exile began, Jake Morrison believed it might actually work. The resistance had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Void Nebula was a place where ships went to disappear. The thick clouds of gas and dust blocked most sensors, making it the perfect hiding place for secrets. As Jake Morrison's shuttle approached the hidden base, he could barely believe what he was seeing. "Is that a space station?" asked Emma Blake, who sat beside him in the co-pilot seat. She had insisted on coming to see the Alliance for herself. "It's bigger than a space station," Jake replied. "It's like a whole city floating in space." The base was made from the hulls of hundreds of different ships, all welded together into a massive structure. Jake could see parts from human vessels, but also sections that looked completely alien. The whole thing was held together by a framework of metal beams that sparkled with energy. "This is Commander Zara," came a voice over the radio. "Welcome to Haven Base, Captain Morrison. Please dock at Bay 7. As they flew closer, Jake could see that the base was busy with activity. Ships of all shapes and sizes were coming and going. Some looked human, others were clearly alien, and a few appeared to be combinations of both. "Dad, look at that ship," Emma said, pointing to a sleek vessel that was leaving the base. "It doesn't look like anything I've ever seen." Jake studied the ship. It had the basic shape of a human destroyer, but its hull was covered with the flowing lines of Zephyrian engineering. Its engines glowed with the blue energy he had seen on the Retribution. "It's a hybrid," he said. "Human and alien technology combined." They docked at the assigned bay and were met by a mixed group of humans and aliens. Jake recognized some of the species from the history books: tall, graceful Zephyrians with their musical voices, thin harmonics with their large eyes, and stocky architects with their stone-like skin. "Welcome to Haven," said a human woman who approached them. "I'm Captain Sarah Wells, formerly of the Earth Defense Force. I've been working with the Alliance for the past 10 years. 10 years? Jake asked. "How did you get here?" "My ship was captured by a Council patrol. We were being taken to a prison world when the Retribution rescued us. Admiral Parker offered us a choice: join the Alliance or be taken to a safe world, to live quietly. Most of us chose to fight." They were led through corridors that were a mix of human and alien architecture. The walls were covered with flowing alien script, but Jake could also see familiar human warning signs and deck numbers. "How many people live here?" Emma asked. "About 50,000, Captain Wells replied. "Representatives from all 8 exiled species, plus refugees from dozens of other worlds. We're not just an alliance anymore. We're a new kind of civilization." They entered a large meeting hall where hundreds of beings were gathered. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place. At the center of the room stood Admiral Parker, but she was not alone. Beside her stood leaders from each of the exiled species. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Parker called out, "please join us. We have much to discuss." Jake and Emma made their way to the center of the room. As they walked, Jake noticed that many of the beings were watching them with interest. Some looked hopeful, others seemed curious, and a few appeared suspicious. "Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral," Parker said, her voice carrying across the room. "This is Captain Jake Morrison, commander of the human exile fleet. He and his people have agreed to join our cause. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Jake felt overwhelmed by the response. For over a century, humans had been outcasts, hunted and hated. Now they were being welcomed as allies. "Captain Morrison," said a tall Zephyrian female, "I am Prime Engineer Lyra. My people have been waiting for this day for 300 years. The humans were always known for their adaptability and innovation. Together, we can build ships that the Council has never imagined." A harmonic stepped forward. "I am Mind Speaker Keth. My people can sense the thoughts and emotions of others. We have felt the pain of the human exile fleet. Your suffering has been great, but it has also made you strong." "And I am Master Builder Torin," said an architect. "My people built many of the great structures in the galaxy. We can help you build not just ships, but entire worlds where your children can grow up in peace." Jake looked around the room. These beings had all lost their homes, just like humanity. They had all been betrayed by the Council. But instead of giving up, they had found each other and built something new. "What do you need from us?" Jake asked. "Everything," Admiral Parker said with a smile. "We need your ships, your people, and your courage. But most importantly, we need your hope." "Our hope?" "Yes. The human exile fleet has been running for over a century, but you never gave up. You kept your families together. You preserved your culture, and you never stopped believing that someday you would find a home. That kind of hope is what will win this war." Over the next several hours, Jake learned about the Alliance's plans. The different species had been working together for decades, combining their technologies and knowledge to create something unprecedented. The Zephyrians had improved ship designs, making them faster and more efficient. The Harmonics had developed new communication systems that could reach across the galaxy instantly. The Architects had created defensive technologies that could protect entire fleets from attack. But the most impressive achievement was the hybrid ships. By combining human adaptability with alien expertise, they had created vessels that were superior to anything the Council had ever built. "We call them Unity-class ships," explained Engineer Corinne Thompson. "Each one is unique, designed for a specific purpose. Some are built for speed, others for firepower, and some for defense." "How many do you have?" Jake asked. 50 so far," said Prime Engineer Lyra. "But with your fleet's help, we can build hundreds more. Your civilian transports can be converted into mobile factories. Your people can work alongside our engineers to create the largest fleet in galactic history." Emma spoke up. "What about the Council? They won't just sit by and watch us build an army." "You're right," said Mind Speaker Keth. "The Council is already preparing for their attack on the Kepler Confederation. We have perhaps 6 months before they launch their assault." 6 months to build a fleet capable of challenging the Council? Jake asked. "That's impossible." "Not impossible," said Admiral Parker. "Difficult, yes, but not impossible. We have something the Council doesn't have." "What's that?" "The truth. And once we broadcast that truth to the galaxy, the Council's own ships will turn against them." Master Builder Taurine activated a holographic display. "Captain Morrison, we have been intercepting Council communications for months. Many of their ship captains are beginning to question their orders. They are tired of fighting wars that seem to have no purpose. The Council has been telling these captains that they are protecting the galaxy from dangerous enemies," added Captain Wells. "But what happens when they learn that the Council has been creating these enemies?" Jake studied the display. It showed communication logs from dozens of Council ships. Many of the messages expressed doubt about the Council's motives. Some even questioned whether the wars were necessary. "You really think they'll turn against their own government?" Jake asked. "Not all of them," Mind Speaker Keth said, "but enough. The Council's power comes from fear and lies. When the truth is revealed, that power will crumble. Emma looked around the room. What do you need me to do? Admiral Parker smiled at the young woman. You, my dear, are going to help us save the galaxy. Your generation grew up during the exile. You understand both the pain of loss and the power of hope. You can speak to young people across the galaxy in a way that we cannot. You want me to make speeches? We want you to tell your story. The story of a young woman who grew up without a home but never gave up hope. The story of a generation that refused to accept the Council's lies. Jake felt a surge of pride as he looked at his daughter. She was young, but she was strong. She had inherited her mother's compassion and her father's courage. I'll do it, Emma said. I'll tell them what it's like to grow up in exile. I'll tell them what it's like to dream of a home you've never seen. The room erupted in applause again. Jake realized that this was more than just a military alliance. It was a family, bound together by shared suffering and common hope. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Parker said, the time for hiding is over. The time for planning is over. The time for action has begun. As the meeting broke up, Jake stood with Emma looking out at the busy docks of Haven Base. Ships were being loaded with supplies and equipment. Engineers from different species were working together to upgrade weapons and engines. Dad, Emma said quietly, do you really think we can win? Jake put his arm around his daughter. I think we have something the Council doesn't have. What's that? Each other. The Council rules through fear and division. But we're united by hope and friendship. That's a powerful combination. Emma nodded and looked back at the base. I want to help build those ships. I want to be part of this. You will be, Jake said. We all will. As they prepared to return to the fleet, Jake felt something he had not felt in years. Excitement about the future. The alliance was real. The hope was real. And for the first time since the exile began, victory seemed possible. The galaxy's outcasts had found each other. And together, they were about to change everything. The Kepler Confederation had no idea what was coming. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of his upgraded ship as the massive Council fleet approached the three peaceful worlds. 2,000 Council ships, armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, moved through space like a wall of death. They're beautiful worlds, said Emma Blake, who now served as his communications officer. Through the view screen, they could see the 3 planets of the Kepler system. Blue oceans, green continents, and white clouds covered their surfaces. Millions of innocent people lived down there, going about their daily lives. Not for much longer if we fail, Jake replied grimly. The Alliance fleet was hidden behind the system's largest moon. 1,000 ships, built by the combined efforts of 8 different species. They were outnumbered 2 to 1, but Jake had seen what these hybrid ships could do. Admiral Parker to all ships, came the familiar voiceover. The radio. This is it, people. Today we stop running. Today we fight back. Today we show the galaxy what the Council really is. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was a mix of humans and aliens, working together as if they had been doing it for years. Lieutenant Peter Williams sat at the weapons station, his fingers dancing over controls that combined human design with Zephyrian efficiency. Dr. Sandra Hayes monitored the ship's new harmonic communication systems. Sir, we're receiving the Council's ultimatum, Emma reported. On the main screen, a Council admiral appeared. He was a tall, proud alien with cold eyes and a voice like ice. People of the Kepler Confederation, you have been declared a threat to galactic security. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally or face total destruction. Jake felt sick. It was the same ultimatum the Council had given to Earth over a century ago. The same lies, the same threats. Emma, open a channel to all ships in the system, Jake ordered. Channel open, sir. Jake took a deep breath. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Alliance Fleet. Council ships, you are about to commit genocide against innocent people. We cannot allow this to happen. The Council Admiral's face appeared on screen again. He looked surprised and angry. Humans? Impossible. You were exiled from this galaxy over a century ago. We were exiled by your lies, Jake replied. But we're back, and we're not alone. The Alliance fleet moved out from behind the moon. 1,000 ships of different shapes and sizes, all flying together in perfect formation. The Council fleet stopped advancing, clearly shocked by what they were seeing. Admiral Parker to Council fleet, came the voice over all frequencies. You know who I am. You thought you had destroyed me and my ship long ago. But we survived, and we learned this truth about what you really are. The battle began without warning. The Council ships fired first, sending thousands of energy beams toward the Alliance fleet. But the Alliance ships were ready. Their architect-designed shields absorbed most of the damage, while their Zephyrian engines allowed them to move faster. Then the Council ships could target. Jake's ship, the new Defiant, dove toward a group of Council destroyers. Its hybrid weapons systems fired blue energy beams that cut through enemy shields like they were made of paper. Beside him, other Alliance ships attacked with weapons the Council had never seen before. Sir, the Retribution is engaging the Council. Flagship, Emma reported. On the screen, Jake could see Admiral Parker's massive ship fighting 3 Council dreadnoughts at once. The Retribution's weapons were incredible, firing beams of energy that seemed to bend space itself. But the Council ships were fighting back hard. Emma, patch me through to the Kepler Defense Forces. Channel open. This is Captain Morrison to all Kepler ships. We are here to help you. Fight alongside us, and we can drive the Council away from your worlds. At first, the Kepler ships hesitated. They had never seen human ships before, and they did not know if they could be trusted. But as they watched the Alliance fleet fighting desperately to protect their worlds, they began to join the battle dock. The fight lasted for hours. Ships exploded on both sides, filling space with debris and fire. Jake watched friends die, saw good. Ships destroyed, but the Alliance kept fighting. Then something amazing happened. Dr. Hayes looked up from her station with wide eyes. Sir, I'm detecting massive transmissions from the harmonic ships. What kind of transmissions? They're broadcasting directly into the minds of the Council crews. They're showing them the truth about the Council's history, about all the species they've destroyed. On the main screen, Jake could see some of the Council ships slowing down, their weapons stopping. Crew members on those ships were learning, for the first time, about the Zephyrians, the Harmonics, the Architects, and all the other species their government had betrayed. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from a Council cruiser, Emma said excitedly. A new face appeared on screen. It was a young Council officer, and he looked horrified. Alliance ships, this is Captain Vex of the Council ship Dominator. We ... We didn't know. We thought we were protecting the galaxy. But the things we're seeing in our minds, the species. You destroyed ... the lies our leaders told us. Captain Vex, Jake replied, you can still do the right thing. Stand down your weapons. Help us stop this madness. One by one, Council ships began to stop fighting. Some turned their weapons on. Other Council ships that continued the attack. Others simply powered down and drifted away from the battle. But the Council's most loyal ships kept fighting. Admiral Parker's voice came over the radio, strained but determined. All ships, concentrate fire on the remaining Council vessels. We end this now. The final phase of the battle was brutal. The remaining Council ships fought with desperate fury, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The Alliance ships, now joined by defecting Council vessels and the Kepler Defense Force, overwhelmed them completely. When the last Council ship either surrendered or was destroyed, the system fell silent, except for rescue operations and damage. Reports. Emma, open a channel to the entire galaxy, Jake ordered. Channel open on all frequencies, sir. Admiral Parker's voice filled the void of space. People of the galaxy, today you have witnessed the truth. The Galactic Council has been lying to you for over 1,000 years. They have destroyed or exiled 8 different species, not because those species were dangerous, but because they were successful. The transmission continued for hours. The Alliance broadcast proof of the Council's crimes to every world in the All-In galaxy. They showed evidence of the destroyed civilizations, testimonies from survivors, and recordings of Council leaders planning their genocides. Within days, the galaxy exploded in revolution. World after world declared independence from the Council. Species that had been oppressed for centuries rose up against their rulers. The Council's vast empire crumbled like a house built on sand. Jake stood on the observation deck of his ship, looking out at the Kepler worlds. The planets were safe, their people free to continue their peaceful lives. Around him, Alliance ships were helping with rescue operations and repairs. Dad, Emma said, joining him at the window. We did it. We actually did it. We did, Jake. Agreed. But this is just the beginning. What do you mean? Jake pointed to the stars. Out there are billions of people who have been living under the Council's lies for generations. They're going to need help building a new kind of galaxy. A galaxy based on truth and cooperation instead of fear and oppression. Emma smiled. And we're going to help them? We're going to help them. All of us together. Admiral Parker's voice came over the ship's speakers. All fleet commanders, please report to the Retribution for a planning meeting. We have a galaxy to rebuild. As Jake and Emma prepared to leave for the meeting, Jake looked back at the Kepler worlds one more time. For over a century, humanity had been homeless wanderers, outcasts from the galaxy they had once hoped to call home. But they had returned, not as conquerors, but as liberators. Not alone, but with friends who had shared their suffering and their hope. The exile was over. The real work was just beginning. 5 years later, Jake stood on the bridge of a new ship, watching as the former Council capital world celebrated its first free elections. The galaxy had been transformed. The old empire of lies and fear had been replaced by a democratic alliance where every species had an equal voice. Emma, now a captain in her own right, commanded a ship crewed by beings from a dozen different worlds. The younger generation, both human and alien, had grown up together during the Reconstruction. They saw each other not as different species, but as fellow citizens of a free galaxy. The Retribution had been turned into a memorial, orbiting the new capital world as a reminder of what could be accomplished when the oppressed stood together against their oppressors. Admiral Parker had died the previous year, but not before seeing her dream fulfilled. At her funeral, representatives from hundreds of worlds had come to honor the woman who had spent her life fighting for freedom. Jake often thought about the long journey that had brought them to this point. The century of exile, the desperate flight from world to world, the constant fear of being discovered by Council patrols. It had been hard, harder than anything humanity had ever endured, but it had also made them strong. It had taught them the value of cooperation, the importance of hope, and the power of never giving up. As Jake looked out at the stars, he saw not empty space, but infinite possibility. Somewhere out